Welcome to the Selling from the Heart podcast on the Salescast Network. You've joined a global movement of sales professionals who are dedicated to being authentic and building trust. We call it Selling from the Heart. Together, we are on a mission to bring sincerity and substance to the sales profession we all love. Get ready to be inspired and equipped as we join our hosts, Larry Levine and Darrell Amy.
Are you ready to discover what sets the best workplaces apart? We are so proud to introduce Culture from the Heart, our newest show launching in January. We'll be diving into conversations with the CEOs of heart-centered companies, leaders who built cultures that inspire and thrive.
And we're on a mission to find the heart-centered CEOs of America. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind award-winning workplaces and learn how these visionaries lead with purpose.
And you can help. Do you work for a company with a heart-centered CEO? We would love to interview them. You can nominate them now at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Look forward to the show in January, and if you have a CEO that's heart-centered, nominate them today at www.culturefromtheheart.com. Hello and welcome back to the Selling from the Heart podcast. Your co-host, Darrell Amy, here today with Larry Levine. What's going on, Larry?
Oh, all kinds of things. The first thing I got to tell you, Happy New Year. We're going to, 2024 was an amazing year here at Selling from the Heart. 2025 is going to be even better, Darrell.
It is going to be phenomenal, and I'm so grateful. I'm excited for our conversation today. We've got Ed Marsh in the studio. This is going to be very interesting. A conversation you're going to want to be a part of and maybe take some action items off of. But you're right. We've got an exciting new year. You've probably been hearing the promotions around the Culture from the Heart podcast, where we are on a mission to find the heart-centered CEOs of companies in America. And there's an opportunity. It links in the show notes at culturefromtheheart.com if you want to nominate your CEO. But if you want to figure out who the heart-centered companies of America are, just go to your podcast, whatever platform you listen on, and search for Culture from the Heart. You're really going to enjoy this show that we've put together. At Selling from the Heart, we are excited. If you're new to this podcast, I want to let you know you've joined a growing community of sales professionals that are dedicated to being genuine, being authentic, building trust. That's what we call Selling from the Heart. And Larry, our community out there is so fantastic. And I want to say a huge shout out to everyone who's leaving reviews on the show. It's really, really fun to see the comments that are coming back from our friends that are listening to the show.
Yeah, why don't you go, and you made a promise last year, Darrell. You're going to start reading some reviews. So go ahead. You got it queued up. Read a quick review.
I do.
On Ed Marsh.
Hey, I got a shout out to Brett Berry. Brett says, what I love most about this podcast is Larry and Darrell are all about teaching people to take action that leads to real results. That's great. And that's what I love. Thank you so much, Barry. And that's what I love about the people in our community is this is a community of action. And we're going to make this a fantastic year. I think 2025 is going to be the best year ever in the sales profession. I'm so excited about it, Larry.
Hey, by the way, in 2025, the podcast celebrates its 8th birthday. I just want to let you all know we're 8 years old, April of 2025. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible.
Does that mean we're almost in podcast middle school? Well, hey, today we're excited to host Ed Marsh. He is a seasoned expert specializing in revenue growth for B2B industrial companies. His unique approach is what he calls his overall revenue effectiveness methodology. And this integrates strategy, marketing, sales, and technology, making it a potent tool for enhancing sales strategies and aligning them with broader business goals. As a directorship certified professional and the host of the Industrial Growth Institute podcast, Ed brings deep insight into how to optimize sales in the industrial sector and beyond. His expertise provides actionable strategies for sales professionals that are looking to refine tactics and leverage new technologies for improved performance. So join us today as Ed shares valuable tips and insights on how we can work together with our marketing teams to maximize our sales and our company's success in the new year. Ed, welcome to Selling from the Heart. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here with you guys.
I'm really looking forward to it.
Great time. I know we are, Darrell.
Well, Happy New Year to you. And as we get started, you get to kick off the new year being the very first person to answer the question that every guest on the Selling from the Heart podcast answers. And you know what that question is. What does it mean to you, Ed, to sell from the heart?
Yeah, obviously a great question that you always kick this off with. And I love listening to people's answers. I love listening recently to Tim Ohai's answer. Actually, his third answer that he's given you, I think, is a
legend.
Yeah.
He's a three-peat vendor, Ed.
Well, I mean, over 8 years, congratulations on that milestone accomplishment. First of all, I mean, that's wonderful. But over 8 years, you got to have Tim back at least a couple times. He's got great ideas. All right. But so my answer to your question may be a little bit different than what you hear from some of the others. I mean, you have a lot of guests that have a lot of sales expertise, a lot of wisdom that they bring. They're all smart folks. They're accomplished and they're right. But most of them start by saying that it's about having the prospect's best interest at heart. And I would back up and I would say, before we worry about the prospect's best interest, I think selling from the heart means that you really have to want to be selling, that you have to love the craft. You have to get energized by the challenge. I believe that's the first piece. You can't sell from the heart if sales isn't genuinely in your heart, I would argue. You got to be in the right place, because otherwise the trust and the authenticity and the other things that you gentlemen routinely talk about don't work. I would add one addendum to that. I would say that, selling from the heart implies caring, but we got to be careful. We can't care more than the prospects do, because when we do silly things. We do things that may be in our interest because we care so much rather than their best interest.
Oh, this is so good. And you got to just real quickly, you got to expand on this, because I think we've all been there. If we're all open and we're all honest with ourselves, Ed, we've been in those situations, haven't we?
Yeah, it's so easy. I mean, because we do care, because we are committed, because we're not just there. Of course, we're there to make money. We're there to, realize the satisfaction of doing a good job and outperforming others and being competitive, all those things that motivate us. But we also want to help the prospects. And when we want to help them more than they want to help themselves, the equation doesn't work.
Yeah, that's so powerful. And I think many of us have been there, especially in the selling from the heart world, where we care so much about our prospects' success. And sometimes that can work to our detriment. That's a great caution. Well, Ed, as we step boldly into this new year, I know we said in the intro that we believe that this is going to be the best year ever. And one of the things that is going to be really crucial in order for us to drive success in the new year as sales professionals and sales leaders is to make sure we're well aligned with the marketing professionals in our organization. And Ed, you and I share that heritage in common. Many of our listeners know I spend a lot of time in one foot in the sales world, one foot in the marketing world. And it seems to me that in many companies, sales and marketing are there's a big gap between them. And it seems to me if we're going to really drive success in 2025, one of the smartest things we could do as salespeople is we could get more aligned with our marketing people and close that gap. So I'm really looking forward to talking about that here today. But I want to just ask this question, kind of put the elephant out on the table here. Why have sales and marketing historically seemed to just be in different silos in small and big organizations alike?
Well, I think it makes sense if you think about how marketing and sales functioned 20 years ago or 50 years ago, when those functions were more formally defined and became part of an org chart in many companies. Mm-hmm. At the time, buyers relied on salespeople to get information. And so that sales interaction from the prospecting through the discovery, through the sale and the successful implementation were all sales activities. And while they still are in many ways, in that scenario, marketing's role was, placing the ads in the yellow pages or doing a little bit of branding, running some trade journal ads, and sales was handling everything else. Now, of course, I mean, it barely bears mentioning, but the internet changed it. I think the stat that perhaps illustrates this best is the common one. I'm sure you've heard it. Buyers are 70% of the way through their journey before they want to talk to a sales rep. Now, there's a lot to unpack from that. Often they don't want to talk to sales reps because there's a lot of mediocre sales reps that aren't creating value and authenticity and trust and everything else. And sales reps who can do that have a place much earlier in the process. Nevertheless, now marketing is doing a lot of what was considered selling, as buyers do a lot of their research on their own without necessarily having to talk to reps. So it kind of started based on how things were at the time, and we've just maintained that legacy org structure and resource allocation, even though buyers, behave differently now.
So where does somebody start on this on this whole journey as far as, as a salesperson? How do I even interact, or where do I even start with this? And here's why I bring this up. So I'm throwing my old school hat on this for just a second. In the industry that I grew up in, we didn't have a marketing department. Right. So sometimes there isn't. Obviously, in this case, we're talking about organizations that have it. But how do you break down that thought in a salesperson's head as far as, boy, if I can get marketing involved, this is what it can help me do? What is that?
Well, so, I mean, I would argue that you probably are going to have a hard time finding a company that doesn't have a website. And if they have a website, they have a marketing department. So they may not identify it that way. There may not be a big head count, but there is some kind of a marketing function or marketing department, probably not as big as it ought to be, given the way buyers research. I think to your question, how does a sales rep begin to do that? I would flip it around and I would say, let me understand from the buyer's perspective what kind of an experience they want. And if you look at it from the buyer's perspective and understand the experience that they want the information, they want the answers, they want to understand, they want help understanding the problem they've got, and they want help diagnosing what's going on and understanding what options they have to reach the outcomes that they need. So if you take that approach and back up as a sales rep and look at it from the buying perspective, rather than from what your org chart tells you or how the task list is divided, I think that gives you a much better sense then of how you can begin to integrate and collaborate with marketing from the perspective of buyers to give them a great experience.
I think that's really good, because if you sit on the other side of the table, and we understand, as sales professionals, we talk a lot here at Selling from the Heart as a core pillar of the trust formula, creating an inspirational experience outlined in, Selling in a Post-Trust World, that book that Larry Levine released last year. That trust formula, the inspirational experience, as salespeople, we have to understand that we don't, as much as we control a lot of that experience, because we're, interacting in those, face-to-face type relationships, we've got to be recognizing that the other part of that experience they have with the company is going to be guided by the marketing team based on what they've prepared, what they're saying, what they're sending out, and how they're interacting with our clients. So I think one of the things, as a baseline, I really want to think with our listeners today about how they can interact with the marketing team in more productive ways in 2025. I think one would be just to know what's going out to the marketplace, like pay attention, like to the website and to the emails, and
subscribe to your own blog and read what's going on
and read it, and I remember the old days, and this is, Larry and I think all of us were selling before the internet became a really big thing. But you would go out there. I remember being on sales calls, and you would walk into a sales call and you'd be talking about something, and the buyer would pull out a print advertising piece that they'd received from your company and that you'd never seen before. Am I the only one that experienced that back in the day? And they'd be asking questions like, I have no idea what that's about. Well, we have no excuse for that as salespeople. And I think one of the things that I would encourage salespeople to do in the new year is actually, subscribe to your companies, go online, fill out the forms, and get in the mix so you begin to understand what's going on. I'm curious your thoughts on that. It sounds so simple, but if we polled the audience and said how many people in our audience actually went and read what's coming out from their company, I think the results would be pretty embarrassing.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. In fact, I wrote a blog article one time about how you ought to fire any sales rep who unsubscribes from your own company blog. I mean, it's you got to have people who are connected and engaged with what you got going on. I think a good place to start, maybe to build a bridge with the marketing department, would be to go to them and ask them to help you with your LinkedIn. The reality is that when you schedule a sales meeting, people are looking at you on LinkedIn. And if your LinkedIn is lame, if it's not active, if it's not up to date, if you're not engaging, if you're not sharing worthwhile information, they're going to have a certain impression of you that may be unfair based on the expertise and knowledge that you bring. But the reality is that's the impression they're gonna form. So marketing can help you with that. I mean, I think we have to understand as salespeople now we have to do our own marketing. Mm-hmm. I saw some fascinating research that showed the way vendors research companies and the conclusions they draw and the bias they form if they see that the senior executives are not active on LinkedIn. Wow. The delta or the difference that makes in prospect perception is huge. So from the executive level through management, through sales reps, you got to be there and you got to be active. And so that's kind of a more traditional marketing activity. So get marketing's help, ask them to help you do more with it. And suddenly you're starting to build a good bridge there to your own benefit, but also to the benefit of the company by forming that collaboration.
Hey, there's something I'm sitting here listening to what you're just saying. And I'm like going back. So Ed, I'm going to go back like years ago. I heard this. I can't tell you where I heard it from. So I'm just going to share with you the quote I heard. I can't reference who said it because I just can't remember, but it was to the tune of salespeople need to become better marketers and marketers need to become better salespeople. What's your thought on that?
Well, I'd go back to that 70% of the way through the buying journey. I mean, there's so much overlap. I think you're absolutely right. And salespeople need to understand, to Darrell's point, understand the materials that marketing makes available. Marketing teams often invest in sales enablement content, tools that are designed to help you. Let's say, for instance, in a typical B2B complex sale, according to Gartner research, I think there's 10 to 12 people on the buying team now. If you've got a deal champion that you're spending most of your time with, if you do your job well, maybe you get to 6 or 7 of the people on the buying team. You probably don't get to all 10 or 12, but you need to be selling to them. And you can't just rely on your champion to sell as your proxy. So you need materials to sell for you. A lot of times marketing departments create that stuff. They do a decent job. There isn't enough discussion. It tends to be from a marketing perspective without the sales perspective blended in. So a good opportunity for collaboration there. But it's there. It's often sitting in the CRM. It's available for sharing. It's available for download. It's available to send attached to an email. And often the sales reps don't even pay attention. They don't know it's there. I mean, kind of to your point, Darrell. So understanding the tools that your team has made available for you and then using them, because it's really frustrating for marketing. Part of the friction that arises is when sales always says, we need more leads, and the ones you send us are junk. Marketing always says, we're sending you leads, we don't hear anything back, and we create all these materials for you and you never use them, and we know you don't use them because we can track the links and we know nobody's ever clicked on it or you've never sent it to anybody. So, I mean, we got to just start doing the work. I mean, honoring the work that each other is doing.
Well, it makes me think that, we're getting pretty basic here. Like, read the stuff your company puts out, subscribe to it, share it. Like, once you read it, start sharing it. Don't just paste the article, like share some thoughts about it that you had when you read it. But then I think another really simple thing that sales professionals can do in the new year. When's the last time, I'm talking to our friends out in the audience, when's the last time you bought lunch for someone on your marketing team? Like, seriously, if you are rowing in the same direction and if buyers are consuming content and it's an active part of the buying process, when's the last time you went out to lunch or, sat down with them and said, hey, I'd like to get to know you. We talk about building authentic relationships with our clients, our prospects, our suppliers, all of these people. But I don't think we've called this out enough. Like, do you have an authentic relationship with somebody on your marketing team? I think if salespeople started inviting marketing team people out to lunch or breakfast or to hang out after work, I think they might fall out of their chairs. But I think good things would happen. Don't you, Ed?
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, even if you have just a shared Slack channel where you call out something when you hear from somebody, hey, that was a great piece, or that helped answer some of my questions, call it out. Let everyone know that you're hearing it, that their work matters, that it's making a difference, that people are consuming it, and that you appreciate the fact that somebody spent the time to give that tool to you to use.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here we are. Obviously, we're at the beginning of a new year. We're talking about alignment of sales and marketing and so forth. We're having a great conversation here. So now here's the thing. What could be 3 things that sales teams could do to better work with marketing teams? And what are 3 things that marketing teams could do to better work with sales teams? I'm throwing this out at you, Ed.
All right. So number 1 that sales could do to be better with marketing teams is easy. Follow up on every lead. Mm-hmm. Don't just look at it and say, oh, well, that doesn't look right, or I'm not sure that, that's not BANT qualified or whatever. Follow up on the lead and provide feedback. And if the feedback is that it's an inappropriate lead for some reason, share that. If the feedback is that, yes, it's the ideal customer profile, but for some reason it's not the right time or whatever the case may be, share that feedback, but follow up on the leads. I think an interesting thing that companies can do in terms of leads is to figure out what each lead costs, charge reps, and once they've followed through the entire proper lead follow-up sequence, or once they've scheduled a meeting, then you give them a credit. And I mean, it's easy. And if they don't credit it at all, then guess what? That comes out of the next commission check. Companies invest so much in it, but at least give marketing the feedback.
Hey, here's why you need to start being nice to your marketing people. Look what might happen. So just please follow up on the leads. Okay, that's number 1. What's number 2 and 3?
So what sales could do to be easy to work with marketing, I know I'm going to have your sales audience hate me for saying that. That's, I guess, moral courage. It's authenticity. I'm a Yankee.
You go for it.
I'm going to say.
It's all good.
Go for it.
I would say number 2 is use the materials or contribute to the process of creating materials. Mm-hmm. When they talk about your ideal customer profile, learn it and understand it. When they prepare sales enablement content, use it. And then number 3, I think I would go to them and ask them for help, on your LinkedIn profile, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's great. So what can marketing do from, take look at the other side of this coin? What are 3 things that marketing people can do to better align with salespeople?
I think marketing needs to actually get out on the floor. I work in an industrial space. So marketing has to understand the real world rather than, sit in Starbucks and concoct ideas that sound good, but are completely irrelevant. So whether your industry means the factory floor or the office floor or standing next to the dentist chair or whatever the case may be, it's actually being there and experiencing it. So the ideas you have are relevant. I think number 2, build great relationships with the subject matter experts in your company. Rather than being kind of aloof and off in the corner, figure out who those grizzled veterans are that have seen it all before, that understand everything that goes on, and build a body of knowledge, kind of codify that body of tacit knowledge that they have in a resource that you can weave into the content that you're preparing. So that's not a direct connection to sales, but it certainly will give a lot more credibility when you create content for sales to use. And then I think the third thing is to really empathize with the challenge that sales has. I mean, sales is a really hard job. Marketing can hit their KPIs by sitting there and, pushing buttons and getting content on a website, because marketing's KPIs are about stuff that happens in the background in most cases, whereas sales has to personally go out and make it all happen. And it's brutally hard, as we all know, and it's getting harder. And so I think marketing has to have a lot more empathy for that.
Hey, Darrell, you know what I just thought of? And you, Ed, you just brought up a great point as far as marketing going out into the field with salespeople to kind of understand the day in the life of a salesperson and so forth. How about if we role reverse this as well? In 2025, and I'm sure it's probably happening, how about if salespeople hung out with marketing people for a day? Just right. Marketing people may or may not go out in the field, right? They all might be in a separate room or whatever the case may be. But how about you as a proactive salesperson? How about if you say, you know what, I'm just going to hang out with my marketing team for a day and see what they do and just flip this on its head.
I really like that. I love that. And this is the spirit behind. I love this conversation. On one level, this is so basic, but these are the relational things that just don't get done. And when they don't get done, everyone's the worse for it. And so I love your perspective here. I think, as I'm listening to this, like one of the best things we could do as salespeople, we talk a lot at Selling from the Heart about gratitude and saying thank you and, being grateful to our clients, being grateful. But I mean, seriously, like when is the last time you said thank you to the people on your marketing team? And what could happen if those relationships, if we tore down the either physical wall, maybe we need to move some walls and start working together, or at least tore down the virtual wall by just, thawing the ice with gratitude. And, as we kick this new year off, imagine how beautiful it would be if the thousands of people that listened to the Selling from the Heart podcast this week walked into their marketing team or pinged them on Slack or got them on the phone face to face and said, man, Ed, I just want to say, I don't say this enough, but thank you. Thank you for all the work that you do. I think that right there, with all the ink and blood that's been spilled trying to figure out how to get sales and marketing working together, just a little bit of gratitude might be the best way to start.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. And I also think that you can't really, I would say that you can't sell from the heart if you're not balanced. I mean, if you sell from the heart to your prospects, but you're caustic and aloof to your colleagues, there's an imbalance there that just kind of catches up with you eventually. I mean, I think you have to try to bring that attitude to all the relationships in your life and certainly within your company. I mean, how about expressing gratitude to the finance people that do the credit checks and make the decisions and let you sell it, even though there's a concern about collection, or go and get receivables credit insurance so that you can sell to a much broader spectrum of customers without fear about credit issues. I mean, the finance people deserve gratitude just like the marketing people deserve it.
I love this gratitude thing. I've said this time and time again. Gratitude bridges the relational divide. It really does. And as we think about that, okay, one more question. I just got to throw this out, Ed. So we talked about the top 3 and all that, but where I'm going to think about, this is where I'm going with this. It's proactive and reactive. So there's reactive things I think salespeople can do. There's reactive things marketing people do. But what's one overarching and you gave us 3 tips, but what's one overarching proactive tip that a sales team can do? And what's one proactive tip that a marketing team can do?
Maybe I'll give you one that's the same one for both. And that is, every time you have a conversation, think about the buyer perspective. I mean, it's amazing. You think about a chatbot. A chatbot on a website it ought to be a simple thing. But when you see the arguments about who ought to man the chatbot, is it marketing or is it sales? I mean, come on. The buyer wants an answer. And if I'm a sales rep, I would be thrilled to have somebody asking questions to let me potentially begin a conversation with them. So let's think about the buyer's experience, the buyer's perspective, how we can improve that. Because if you're talking about selling from the heart and you believe that taking care of the buyer is an important part of that, well, then we have to understand the way the buyer's thinking about it, not argue about our internal stuff, but let the buyer's perspective solve for us every time we have a conversation.
Oh, that's so great. What a wonderful conversation today. And I really, this one is a different conversation than we've ever had on the Selling from the Heart podcast in 8 years.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a great thing. I think we need to have this conversation more often about sales and marketing. And we talked about expressing gratitude to the marketing folks. I'm super grateful for you to be on the podcast today. And I know the question that all of our listeners are asking is, how can I get more Ed Marsh in my life?
Well, I do my own LinkedIn, so you can find me on LinkedIn, Ed Marsh with the American flag after my name, or go to edmarshconsulting.com. That's my website. You can find a lot more there.
Awesome.
That was good stuff. Hey, Ed, thank you for investing time with us. We appreciate it.
Well, thanks so much for having me on as your guest.
Fantastic. What a great conversation. What a great way to kick off the year. I'm just, some of the conclusions.
Darrell, I saw your eyes. I know you love talking about marketing stuff. I saw your eyes the whole time. It was good.
But, and we could have gone very technical, and there's so many other things we can talk about. And you can learn this stuff from your marketing friends about buyers' journeys. And you can learn about all this. If you'll spend the time with them and invest in those relationships, it's going to pay off. And I think, just one of the best conclusions I came to was just say thank you. Like, let's build this bridge, and let's be the ones at selling, in the Selling from the Heart community that are known for climbing over that wall, knocking that wall down, because it's in our best interest and it's the best interest of our clients for those relationships with our friends in marketing to be just top notch.
Hey, there's as you bring this to a close, Darrell, there's one word, and I just got to throw it out there. And I love and the stuff that Ed shared was simplistic stuff, necessary stuff. But here, if you can implement what Ed shared, this is the word that comes to mind because it's near and dear to me. Is you all start getting clarity.
Yeah,
y'all get clear on things. From a marketing perspective, you get clarity on what salespeople do out there. Salespeople, you get clarity on what marketing people do. So maybe that's the key to this, is by you aligning, y'all get clarity in 2025.
It's going to be a good thing. So I think if you'll take action, at least one, if not every action item we gave you today, it's going to really help you set 2025 up to be the best year ever. 2025 is going to be the best year ever on the Selling from the Heart podcast. We're already committed to that. We've got some exciting guests coming up. You're going to want to make sure to like or subscribe on whatever platform on which you listen. And if you haven't been to YouTube yet, we'd love for you to visit us on YouTube. And when you do, hit the subscribe button. It's so much fun seeing your smiling face, Larry, and seeing the interactions. And there's a lot of extra stuff that shows up on the YouTube channel from time to time. So go over to YouTube, search for Selling from the Heart. You'll find us there. Like or subscribe to that. And you don't want to miss a thing because there's so much great stuff coming up.
Yeah. And then just forward think. In 3 more months, you can come hang out with us on our 8th birthday party in April. So thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast.
Well, thank you. And Happy New Year to everybody. Till next time, keep being genuine, keep being authentic, keep building trust, show some love to your marketing team. And most of all,
sell from the heart.